Let's get to the Dersh. Let's get to Alan Dershowitz. He has been heavily implicated. He's probably the most implicated throughout this entire trove of documents of the first batch of the 109 of the 900 and some odd pages of these first court release documents. He is mentioned 137 times. Let's go over some of the things, and to be very clear, he was asked to have sex, he had sex with underage girls. There were 8 times that he was implicated in crime throughout these documents. He's mentioned 137 times. Most of those times are benign, very similar to Bill Clinton or others, where it's just we request a deposition, or this person, a lot of the legal stuff, a lot of the legal requests or legal them saying, no, there's nothing here, or, a lot of the lawyers mentioning things and going back and forth. But he is implicated on 8 separate occasions. In the factual background of the motion to join this action, the lawyers for Jane Doe 3 and Jane Doe 4 provide their argument for why Jane Doe 3 and 4 should be allowed to join the lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. So these are 2 of the victims who wanted to join in. In that factual background, Dershowitz is accused by Jane Doe 3 of having sexual relations with her on numerous occasions while she was a minor. Here is, in 1999, Jane Doe 3 was approached by Ghislaine Maxwell, one of the main women whom Epstein used to procure underage girls for sexual activities and a primary co-conspirator in his sexual abuse and sex trafficking scheme. In fact, it became known to the government that Maxwell herself regularly participated in Epstein's sexual exploitation of minors, including Jane Doe number 3. Maxwell persuaded Jane Doe number 3, who was 15 years old, to come to Epstein's mansion in a fashion very similar to the manner in which Epstein and his other co-conspirators coerced dozens of other children, including Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2. When Jane Doe 3 began giving Epstein a massage, Epstein and Maxwell turned it into a sexual encounter, as they had done with many other victims. Epstein then became enamored with Jane Doe 3, and with the assistance of Maxwell, converted her into what is commonly referred to as a sex slave. Epstein kept Jane Doe 3 as his sex slave from 1999 through 2002, when she managed to escape to a foreign country and hide out from Epstein and his co-conspirators for years. From 1999 through 2002, Epstein frequently sexually abused Jane Doe 3, not only in West Palm Beach, but also in New York, New Mexico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, in international airspace on Epstein's private planes, and elsewhere. Epstein also sexually trafficked the then minor Jane Doe, making her available for sex to politically connected and financially powerful people. Epstein's purpose in lending Jane Doe, along with other young girls, to such powerful people were to ingratiate himself with them for business, personal, political, and financial gain, as well as to obtain potential blackmail information. Now, here's where it mentions Dershowitz about this, but just remember that the point of lending out these girls to such powerful people were to ingratiate himself with them for business, personal, political, and financial gain, as well as to obtain potential blackmail information, which is what this whole thing is about. One such powerful individual that Epstein forced then minor Jane Doe 3 to have sexual relations with was former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, a close friend of Epstein's and well-known criminal defense attorney. Epstein required Jane Doe 3 to have sexual relations with Dershowitz on numerous occasions while she was a minor, not only in Florida, but also on private planes in New York, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. In addition to being a participant in the abuse of Jane Doe 3 and other minors, Dershowitz was an eyewitness to the sexual abuse of many other minors by Epstein and several of Epstein's co-conspirators. Dershowitz would later play a significant role in negotiating the NPA on Epstein's behalf. Indeed, Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement that provided immunity from federal prosecution in the Southern District of Florida, not only to Epstein, but also to any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, NPA at 5. Thus, Dershowitz helped negotiate an agreement with a provision that provided protection for himself against criminal prosecution in Florida for sexually abusing Jane Doe 3. Because this broad immunity would have been controversial if disclosed, Dershowitz, along with other members of Epstein's defense team and the government, tried to keep the immunity provisions secret from all Epstein's victims and the general public. even though such secrecy violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. So that was striking a deal, covering it up, and hushing them, which is against the law. So you can strike a deal with somebody and have them say no comment, or they're not going to further, but to get them to lie or to say or to deny allegations, I believe is against the law. If there were actual events that happened, it just kind of depends, I suppose. I guess there's probably a lot of loopholes, but the allegations against Dershowitz were relevant to at least 8 separate issues. The response also explained some of the evidence supporting the allegations against Dershowitz, including sworn testimony from one of Epstein's household employees that Dershowitz came pretty often to Epstein's Florida mansion and got massages while he was there. Yeah, so Dershowitz is very much involved. And here's something interesting about Alan Dershowitz, because we have to remember that this whole Epstein saga is not just about a pedophile ring or some sex ring with a bunch of billionaires and powerful people. This is really about blackmail. The crimes that happen against these young people were crimes, and they need to be held accountable for those particular crimes. But the crime against the American people, the crime against, or even the world, is the blackmail scheme. That's the crime that we should be even more interested in, because that is potentially ongoing, continues to have consequences, perhaps has led us into numerous political decisions by our politicians that were against the best interest of the American public, but only for their own self-preservation, to not reveal some sort of blackmail. Could have led us into wars, for all we know. Those political decisions could have been decisions that ended up costing people their lives. That is the real scandal of the Epstein saga. It's not just about pedophilia or sex ring. This is about blackmail and what that blackmail was used for. And that is what we really should be hunting down. Now, here's Alan Dershowitz. A lot of people are wondering, well, who was the blackmail scheme? Who was involved in what was the blackmail scheme for? And many of us suspect for the state of Israel, quite frankly, that a lot of these people, Epstein, Dershowitz, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, all of them connected to the state of Israel and doing the dirty work for the state of Israel to ensure that American politicians stay in their pocket, to ensure that America does everything that Israel wants and turns a blind eye to, I don't know, things like genocide, ethnic cleansing. If you want to get people to do whatever you want, you blackmail them and then you always gain their support. That's what it looks like is going on right now with everything happening currently with Israel and its attack on Gaza. And here you've got Alan Dershowitz, an American, by the way. He's not an Israeli citizen from what I understand, unless Israel hides its citizenship or if people can conceal this in some way. But as far as we know, Alan Dershowitz is an American citizen. Yeah, look at this. He wrote a book, The Case for Israel. This is for a foreign country. You've got Alan Dershowitz, who shows up 137 times in these documents so far. And this is his book, The Case for Israel. Oh, but this is just a sex ring, pedophilia. This isn't about blackmail for Israel, you anti-Semite. Okay. Has he ever written a book, The Case for America, considering he's supposed to be an American citizen? But instead, in The Case for Israel, what it says on the Amazon listing, the case for Israel is an ardent defense of Israel's rights, supported by indisputable evidence, presents a passionate look at what Israel's accusers and detractors are saying about this war-torn country. Dershowitz accuses those who attack Israel of international bigotry and backs up his argument with hard facts. Widely respected as a civil libertarian, legal educator, and defense attorney extraordinaire, Alan Dershowitz has also been a passionate, though not uncritical, supporter of Israel. Yeah, what is this criticism? It's just a cover-up. I criticize them a little bit. Here's also Dershowitz. Now, Israel is going to be they're going to The Hague to face charges of genocide against the Palestinian people. And who is Israel tapping to be their attorney to represent them in that? None other than Alan Dershowitz. Here he is. Israel may hire Alan Dershowitz to defend against genocide charge at the UN. Report. Known as a staunch defender of Israel, Dershowitz has been a frequent critic of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, but he's going to go and defend Israel against the charges of genocide as an American citizen. Does that make any sense to you? Does that make any sense at all? Except, here's his name pops up 137 times in these Epstein documents, 8 of those instances within the documents are of crimes that he is being uh, accused of. 8 different instances of crime. Here's what Alan Dershowitz had to say about all of this. He appeared on Fox News to defend himself as his name popped up all over these documents. This is what he has to say in defense. Watch this.
Now, the one point I do want to make is that I understand all the feminist groups and the radicals who think this is the worst thing in the world, that anybody ever had any contact with Jeffrey Epstein. Where are all those radical feminists when it comes to the Hamas rapes of young Jewish girls, sexual abuse, beheadings? They are quiet. They are silent. The incredible hypocrisy of the Me Too movement. Me Too, except if you're a Jew. And I want to have a list of all the radical feminists who are pushing hard, and I understand that, to get all these names revealed. And I want to know how many of them have ever actually condemned Hamas for the rapes that we now know occurred and the murders that occurred. How many have been silent, and how many, like the National Lawyers Guild, have actually approved of what Hamas did? So let's put this in context.
Okay. Who cares about me raping girls? What about Hamas? What about Hamas raping girls? Don't pay attention to my rapes. Pay attention to their rapes. I mean, what kind of this guy's an attorney. It boggles my mind that he's considered one of the best attorneys out there in the world because he does not ever have a good defense. He has terrible answers. He's not quick on his feet. These are the types of things he has to say. Who cares? I might have raped 8 girls, but whatever. Or girls 8 different times implicated in these documents. But what about somebody else's rape? Don't look at mine. Now, remember when I interviewed Alan Dershowitz, I had to ask him these questions. He wasn't prepared to answer these questions. He came on to talk about his book about Trump and to promote his book about Trump. But I couldn't have Alan Dershowitz on this show without asking him about Epstein. I did prep his people and tell them I was going to be, I would only agree to have him on the show if I was going to be asking him about Epstein. I think what happened was they didn't relay that information, or they did, but he didn't quite hear it because he was in a hurry or, too frazzled about it, who knows. But he was taken off guard, which is a great opportunity when somebody's taken off guard, because then they answer sometimes a bit more honestly when they don't get to prepare and think about their answers. So watch this interview that I did with Alan Dershowitz, because he admits to working with Mossad. He also makes a quick claim when I asked him about Epstein's death, whether or not he killed himself. He seems to indicate that he did not kill himself, and then quickly backtracks. But watch this. Okay. Well, many of us suspect that Jeffrey Epstein was an asset to Mossad, and that Ghislaine Maxwell was in fact an agent of Mossad. There's a lot
Totally
of evidence
nonsense.
that point to this direction, and
No,
that they
there's no
were
evidence.
operating a blackmail operation in
Yeah.
order to get very powerful people, including people like yourself, in precarious positions to where you could potentially work on behalf of the state of Israel or protect the
Well,
state of Israel
I've been
in
working
some
on
way.
the state of Israel. I've been working for the state of Israel since before you were born. Jeffrey Epstein once visited me in Israel. He had never been there. He didn't know anybody in Israel. He didn't work for the Mossad. The Mossad wouldn't hire him. And I hope he had videotapes of everybody, because they would show I never did anything improper. I have one other question. Are you used to having people come on your show to talk about one subject and then sandbagging them on another subject without any warning? Because it's nice to know you do that, and it will make certain that I have nothing to hide. I'm happy to talk about any of this, but I'm used
Actually,
to more ethical journalism.
no, we actually did notify the people who booked you onto the show that you would be asked about Epstein, and they assured us that you were aware
No,
of
they
this.
never notified me about that, and you'd have to show me that email.
Okay. One last question. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
No, of course not. Well, he didn't kill himself without the help of some people. He did kill himself, but he killed himself with the help of guards. He didn't do it by himself. He couldn't have done that. Obviously, though, the videos were turned off, and the guards turned their back, and his cellmate left. So I think he killed himself, but he killed himself with the assistance of some people in law enforcement.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dershowitz, thank you so much for joining the show. Appreciate you
Well,
being
it's the
here.
last time. It's the last time you'll have me on your show, so take advantage of it.
I think I got what I needed out of you. Thank you very much.
Well, you got what you wanted. Thank you.
Yes, I did. I did get what I want. I got what a lot of us wanted out of that interview, I think, which was a bit of honesty from Dershowitz. And now there he is saying this is an ethical journalism. Um, who is he to talk about ethics as his name is being brought up several times by these young people claiming that he was basically farmed out to them? And it really, his answer about Jeffrey Epstein makes one wonder, who was really truly in charge? A lot of us do suspect, of course, all these are suspicions, that Jeffrey Epstein, though, was an asset to Mossad. What level was he in the operation, in the blackmail operation? Was he just like the pervert that they found, and they were like, okay, here's a pervert. We can make him rich. He's charming enough to like schmooze all these people, and we can use him as the person to connect us and to get him to commit to help us obtain the blackmail. But there were probably people way higher than him on the chain. Ghislaine Maxwell could have been higher than him on the chain, his handler of some kind. Even Alan Dershowitz himself. Who knows, like where he falls on that? He says he'd been working for the state of Israel since before I was born. So in what capacity exactly? We would love to know. We'd love to know in what capacity were you working for the state of Israel? Were you Jeffrey Epstein's boss, perhaps? Were you, these are questions that Alan Dershowitz should be brought to task, and he should be asked those questions now that his name is brought up. But he's not wanting to answer any questions. But Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. That's all his response at this point is just Hamas. Look at Hamas. What about the Hamas rapes? Not a good enough defense. Just because somebody else commits a crime doesn't mean that means you're absolved from also committing crime. So that is what we know so far. We will find out. We'll be looking through the rest of the trove of documents. We're not sure exactly how many are being released, the total number of docs, but so far, even though the names I don't think are necessarily new names. I think we knew a lot of these names. Getting a little bit more details, more information is certainly interesting, and we will continue to follow these document drops.